Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hurts is back. He's going to go with the draw. He's going to run. He's going to score. Jalen Hurts.
He's healthy. McKewon sprints in motion to the near flat. Mahomes now steps up in the pocket, throws lane wide open, back of the end zone. Touchdown! Kansas City. Marquez Valdez-Scantling on a 6-yard touchdown.
Pump fakes to the right.
Oh, got him.
Throws to the end zone. It is caught by Hayden Hurst. Touchdown. Bengals. Burrow sucked the Bills in with the pump fake, and Hayden Hurst was wide open at the goal line.
Purdy out of the shotgun. Kittle and Juszczyk are right. Ayuk the other side. Handoff McCaffrey. Touchdown! San Francisco!
Hey, good morning, everybody. Monday morning here on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Robbie did a pretty nice job filling in for me on Friday, so I thought I'd try to fill in my beard a little bit to try to pass like Robbie,
hey,
but I don't think it.
How long is that going to take to grow?
Let's just right here?
Yeah. Months?
Yeah. Well, I'll get scolded by my mom to shave before I even get it to be good.
Nothing says 26 like getting scolded by your mom.
And I'll listen, too. I'll listen. She'll be like, Andrew, shave your face. I'll be like, sorry, Mom. All right, I'll go upstairs. I'll go upstairs right now.
Listen. She doesn't like hair?
No, she likes the clean cut look. My dad's like a guy that shaves every day. He will never have a 5 o'clock shadow. He will never even have a shadow.
I'm just telling you, with a name like Barry Rogers, he probably has a glow, an aura, if you will.
So
that is an all-American superstar, clean-cut, shaven name,
mm-hmm.
Barry Rogers.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he sounds like a closet superhero.
So insert yourself into my family here. This is how weird we are. We like sing his name because we know it bothers him. So leave it at
Barry Rogers.
No,
Barry Rogers.
It's like, I can't even do it. My voice is already gone. It's so hoarse. I don't know why it's hoarse either.
Spending all that time in the loo this weekend.
Yeah, but we just sing to him in a high-pitched voice, and it's to the tune of Carol of the Bells, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra song.
Yeah, I don't know if we can hang out.
it's like my name is Bear, my name is Bear. It's like, so we just go through that, and let's just say we could start a band. We could start a family band. We could be the Von Trapps.
The Von Trapps?
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the Von Erichs. Yeah. Are you a wrestling guy? No. A lot of tragedy too. So you don't want to be those. You don't want to be that family.
No. Neither.
Safe travels though. No
travels.
No flight cancellations.
No, we flew Southwest. Believe it or not, no flight cancellations. Although I'm really good about checking in for my flight before I leave.
I'm shocked.
I am not so good about checking in when I'm supposed to come back. Because I'm in the heat of doing a bunch of things, and then all of a sudden 5 hours later, I'm like, no, I know I'm going to get the C boarding group, and I did.
I watched a piece last night on the news about the horrors of losing luggage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was predominantly Southwest of all those cancellations a month ago. And, this particular lady and this family has a tracker for her luggage. So she finally found it after a month, which would be.
Oh, like an AirTag.
Yeah, which would be very stressful.
You know,
Very stressful.
those instances too. I know a buddy that lost a camera on a flight one time, and he was in baggage claim services, whatever it is, for 2 hours when we got on a trip.
That's only happened to me once, and it was a late flight. It was the latest flight. Matter of fact, on that flight coming back, I saw Bomac, who was Terrence Crawford's trainer, and Terrence coming back at the same time. So we kind of chopped it up in the airport, waiting for luggage, if you will. It's very stressful. But what I learned to do since then is the necessities. So the good stuff is always with me, and I keep my shaving kit, like my hygiene kit, with me in my backpack,
which is huge because
outside of that, I'll figure out the clothes and shoes situation.
Yeah, and that's a big thing because I don't do that.
Yeah, I have.
So if I lost my bag, I lose it all.
Yeah,
and it's go to the store, pick out one of everything.
I travel with. I keep one in the truck. Just shaving.
Really?
Kit. Oh yeah, everything. I got a vitamin kit, toothbrush, toothpaste, powder, mouthwash.
If you ever had your car searched, people would be like, "Do you live in here?"
Well, I just think you just never know.
Do you have a microwave in there?
No, that'd be nice though. And I'm struggling. There's a couple things that still have to be fixed on my car. I have just annoying stuff, right? Like total first world problems, like this SOS thing where you can call if it's an emergency,
like the OnStar button
blinks red. And on my dash, it shows up like as a hazard. So the chip for that or whatever is like.
I feel like that's more of a problem than just like an everyday thing in your car.
Dude,
like, is something wrong with that?
We're going on like a week now. And the other thing is Shane, you can relate to this. So in like newer vehicles, the tire pressure thing is very sensitive.
Mine actually needs to be inflated. My back right.
I'm coming up at like 32 PSIs and it still comes on. So
yeah,
I think it's where they set the pressures for everything and then it goes from there like as the benchmark. So I have to redo that.
It just makes me laugh how everything needs a recall. Like you get a new car and it's because they don't really know if the car is going to fully work. It's like, you got a recall. We got a new part for you.
If you breathe on it correctly, like it doesn't work. Go back to making old cars like they did in the 80s, real steel.
You know who can make cars work? Dingmans.
Yeah. So you know what? That would have been so convenient if they could have like fixed the motherboard and stuff but that's not really what they do. Like you have to go back to the dealership, which could be a while.
Well, and if you need any car auto repair, at least because of weather conditions that drove you into a light pole, or just because you have the SOS signal going off on you at all times.
A lot of little things.
It's a strobe light in DB's car. Go to Dingman's Collision Center. They've got you hooked up. They work on all makes and models. They have 4 locations. You can find them really anywhere in town in Omaha. Visit dingmans.com to schedule an estimate today. Now, here's where I thought I was on a reality TV show this weekend. So we're flying back. We're in the Chicago airport Midway, and these 3 blonde women were just arguing. And it was more of like the 8th grade to high school teenage girl fight, right? They separate from each other. They're sitting in different parts of the airport. These ladies were in like their late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
And
I just wondered why you
it's like Real Housewives.
I wondered why you went to the blonde card as a
no, I was just describing, like, put the picture in your mind of what you're about to see. Lip fillers, makeuped up, like you're really watching TLC at this moment. And I thought Ashton Kutcher was going to jump out at any moment.
Okay.
But this one blonde woman walks up to the other one, and they're talking about how they're fighting over her brother. Like, I don't know if one of them was married to the brother and they got into a fight, and she's like, I think I deserve an apology. And the other one's like, I'm not doing this here. And they are just combative toward each other, back and forth. And she's like, whatever her name was, I'm not doing this here. I'm not. And that girl kept trying to like poke the bear, because you could obviously tell the one that didn't want to talk was the one that was ticked off. and the other one, the apologetic one, that in turn made you want to apologize to her. Do you know anybody like that where you're wrong, but you end up getting the apology?
Yeah.
I had an instance like that at the golf simulator bar this weekend too. The lady brought out, so I ordered a wrap, pretty easy, pretty standard order, right? You get a wrap, you ask for if you want it on white or wheat, and then the side. So I said, I want a wheat wrap with waffle fries. I got a white wrap with tater tots. So like something was wrong with either you put in the order wrong or they messed it up in the kitchen. So I just told her, I was like, hey, it's not a big deal. I'll like still eat it, but I just wanted to let you know, like I wanted this and this. And she's like, well, I worked at the hospital for 10 hours last night. So, yeah, it's been so long. So thanks for telling me that I, expleted up. And I'm like, should I apologize to you? No. And then, but for me, I'm Mr. Well, you're not going to snap at me, and I'm not just going to sit here and take it. And so I said,
Mr. Clapback.
Oh my goodness. So I said, well, I mean, did you give your patient pudding when he wanted Jell-O? Like, what are you talking about here?
No,
like,
you
swear to God, swear to God. Because I'm like, wait a second, you got it wrong. I'm going to tell you got it wrong. I didn't say like, hey, give me a refund or anything. I didn't say I wanted waffle fries too. I'm like, I'll eat it. I just wanted to let you know, like, hey, I got something different. And if it was a mess up in the kitchen, you can address it. No, she made me like want me to apologize to her. And so I'm like, well, I don't do that.
Well, there is a nursing shortage. Maybe it's high level stress.
You know what? If she wants to work for 10, 12 hours, and I am very much appreciative of anybody that works in healthcare. But I didn't ask you if you worked in healthcare and that you deserved a high five for it. I gave her a high five for it.
Hashtag
all I did was say, hey, I ordered this and you gave me that, and then you pulled the healthcare card on me.
Guilt?
Yeah, she made me. She wanted to try to make me feel bad.
Did you have on your Teflon armor of righteousness?
I feel like I needed a bulletproof vest with how many shots were trying to be fired at me.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
I feel like a penguin.
It's kind of like everybody else this weekend, or if you were ranked number 1 or number 2 in college basketball.
And I watched that game too. It was TCU KU at the bar, and there were a ton of KU fans for some
Always.
reason.
I mean,
like, all over the place.
Mob deep.
And that game wasn't even close.
No, pillar to post. I was watching that game real time, and I think my mouth dropped open. So, once TCU went on the 17-0 run, and you could like hear a pin drop at the Fog. And I think in the back of my mind the whole time, I thought KU was going to make a run because they came right back with a little mini run of their own. But TCU just wasn't having it, man. The barrage of threes. There were some crazy college basketball games. I watched Wyoming, Colorado State. Wyoming, not very good. I think they had 5 wins total. Colorado State, pretty good. End up losing that game 59-58. Choked the lead late. Marquette. I'm telling you.
That's your team.
There's something about them.
I shouldn't say that's your team. That's the team that you've been high on.
Yeah, there's just something about them, right? They sent a message on the road, and I think we forget that they're top 25.
Mm-hmm. How about Maryland almost pulling off the upset last night against Purdue?
Maryland is a nuisance. So it just seems like if Lawyer isn't getting it going from range, I don't know. Like Purdue seems like they're just going to play close games because they pack it in and they play through the post. The other thing is how scary. I'm going to stay on them, and Xavier Johnson isn't even healthy yet. How scary is Indiana when they get going? Race Thompson played just for a smidge, and the place went crazy. Trace Jackson Davis going bananas.
3 first names.
Shafino starting to really play well. I mean, and Michigan State jumped out early in that one, and Indiana was having none of it. Came back to send a message going away there. That's not a team that I would enjoy playing. Mm-mm. And they finally took care of the basketball. Nebraska. Wow, they turned Penn State over more than you thought. So you figured they have a chance. Then the scoring went dormant. The Big
They were
Ten,
playing from behind the entire game.
Big Ten is nuts, but maybe not near as crazy as the Big East. UConn got their get-right game against
a bad Butler team.
What is going on with Butler's offense?
It's a bad team.
And UConn needs better point guard play, though. See, that's their, I always try to figure, okay, UConn needs more consistency at the point guard spot. That's their problem. And then, of course, we had the playoffs. And I was telling you this, even though I thought, as the game wore on, it was getting closer last week and we were looking at the lines, I was like, man, Jacksonville's going to beat the Chargers. If I could forecast that the matchup was the low seed Jacksonville winning and then having Cincinnati have to play Buffalo and not Kansas City, 100 times out of 100, I would have took Kansas City to be in the Super Bowl. But because I didn't love taking the Bills.
I took both 1 seeds, right? And
I didn't love taking the Bills. I'm like, I just think that Kansas City's going to have to play Cincinnati. Yesterday, turns out Cincinnati goes to Buffalo, and
who was wearing the headsets in those games or in that game on Buffalo's sideline?
Apparently me, because that game was called as though you have no idea what your personnel is capable of. And listen, kudos to Coach Taylor and that offense, because they ran the same 3 passing concepts.
Taylor?
Same 3 passing concepts. Joe Burrow could have a check down tomorrow if he wanted it and know that it was going to be there. And he's just unflappable.
You would have thought that O-line was the Eagles' O-line.
You're missing 3/5 of your offense. And if they've lamented about Von Miller one more time, I'm like, stop talking about missing Von Miller. You think the Bengals O-line doesn't want to be healthy? They're kicking their ass. Like, who cares about Von Miller?
Hey, but if Von Miller was in that game,
you can't stop the run.
If Von Miller was in that game, how many more sacks would there be? 2? 2 more sacks?
It's like, what are we talking about?
Joe Burrow has been under duress since last season.
And he couldn't care less. He's unflappable. And it's like
those rephones.
And all Buffalo wanted to do was just get vertical. I told you the stat last week, right? 26.2 yards per, even after they had the lead in the second half. And I was kind of messing with you about Ken Dorsey, the bizarro world, the lack of the arm strength. So maybe he's lamenting about the alien. Almost turned it down. Although the night game, Philly Eagles, went with my man Kugler. But coaching matters. And was that the same Dak Prescott that played in Tampa? What was that?
I mean, that's what we've been seeing out of him all year. When he came back from injury, it was either we're getting Dak as a top 5 quarterback or we're getting a Dak that falls out of the top 10. And there was no in between. Nothing this year showed consistency in Dak Prescott's game. Tony Pollard getting hurt, that was a big loss for them, but that's not why the Cowboys lost that game.
Listen, I hate those kinds of tackles.
You mentioned another.
I feel like I tweet about it every week. I get mad
on Saturday and you tweeted on Sunday.
I get mad at our guys in practice when I see that. One of our running backs, and he wasn't healthy all year. Everybody wondered what was wrong with Jamez Ross. I mean,
James Robinson?
No, our guy at Westside.
I know. He runs like James Robinson.
Yeah, that is what hey, he's kind of yoked too. He looks fantastic.
He runs tummy out.
He is he's
good player.
He's having a good off.
He's a good player.
For
is
us. Yes. And he's motivated too. But anyway, so the crazy thing is those side pull down tackles never turn out well, right? It's just they just don't. And I couldn't believe and I get it. It's Twitter, it elicits immediate reaction, but to go from 0 to 100, I was pretty specific about the tackles that I don't like, and it's like, oh man, just put flags on it. I'm like, no, that's nowhere near what I'm saying. Like, learn to tackle correctly,
right?
And that will limit those kinds of things from being out of position. And you grab a guy to the side or from behind, and you drop to the ground. Like you've never been taught that, but I get real time and desperation. You're just trying to get guys to the ground however you can. But it just never turns out well. I hate to see it. And Pollard a lot less fortunate than Mahomes was.
And I didn't have a problem with the Mahomes hit.
See, I did, just because I felt like Key wanted to be a part of it, right? Just pull off.
So in regards to who you're saying, low or high? The guy that came in low or the guy that came in high?
I didn't like Key using his weight when you were already gonna be pretty much be out of the play.
Well, so yeah,
that's
I can understand that play.
I
looked at, when I read your tweet, I looked at it from reverse order. I thought you meant the tackle that came in high that ended up falling.
I don't like
the
weight coming down to bring a guy down on a tackle.
Yeah,
especially when you start high.
Well, that's where I kind of sat and said I didn't mind it because he went for the ball first. He went for the arm.
I understand being in the moment, but once you're
gravity brings you down.
You didn't think that was a little extra?
The whole knee thing and him looking down at his ankle, I was like, now we're grasping for straws. I mean, you slow down the play, and it looks like that. Like, you piece it together one piece at a time. It's like, oh, yeah, it looks like he purposely stuck his knee in. So you do that tackle in a game, and a millisecond later, you don't even realize what you did.
Yeah, so let's just say that, hypothetically, that I said, hey, I hate that tackle, the weight to the ground, and yes, I do understand real-time tackling. Let's just say oh, wait, I did say that, right? Like, very specific.
Right. There were some people, though, that commented towards you that didn't read the tweet in full.
Well,
and I think that's where
and it's cool. And
it's
cool because one of the guys I like a ton. The other guy I don't really know that well, but BJ's fine. Like, he's a realist, and he's been tweeting for years. He's cool, so it was fine. But I just don't like the fast forwarding to flag, wanting to play flag. But see what happens.
Tell you what, though, that happens to Tom Brady. That's reffing the passer.
Well, Arden Key's personal foul that they got on Mahomes, like a couple of plays later. Well, the exact same thing happened to Trevor Lawrence, and ain't call a thing. So my deal is, I don't want. Listen, it's me. Like, you come watch us practice in high school. We're physical. I'm not for taking. I want a good physical game. What I'm for is, if you're going to have a shaky rule, right, if it's going to be subjective, you better get some consistency on how it's administered, because then people, they panic. So when you say something kind of innocuous, like, I don't like this tackle, yes, I understand real time, it turns into, well, let's go on to flag. It's because of the emotions that they already bring to the table with their sentiment on how the game is officiated. It's not really about my tweet, or whomever's tweet. It's how they feel the game is moving. So they don't want people to, like, overcorrect.
Did we see just the opposite in the Dallas 49er game?
Oh, yeah.
When the defensive end guy, he let up on actually making it.
Tariq Armstead, when he could have hammered Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
By the way, whatever Dak was doing in the end zone, I have no idea. But I think Tariq Armstead was so. Did you see he put his arm?
Yeah,
he put his arms up like, yeah,
because you don't want to touch him anymore,
because he was high though.
Right.
So, but he had never. Tariq, he was upright. Right. So I think if he was down and his head was down, like maybe through the sternum, he probably would have felt better. But I mean, Armstead's a long guy,
and I understand why he was high, because if Dak
makes a move,
he should have thrown too.
You're thinking you're going
to block the pass.
Oh, totally.
But what was Dak doing there in that moment? Can you imagine rolling out in the pocket in the end zone and then just taking a hit?
How about how I jinx Schultz? I was hyping him up because I like Schultz is going to be a good tight end.
He made some money for one kid on Sunday. Did you see that first touchdown parlay?
I don't know what was going. Yes, you degenerate.
Yes.
I was laughing too on Twitter when you said, "Well, only if it was hockey." I was like, "Please, man, who are you fooling? Get out of here.
Hey, lots more to cover, and I'll tell you next here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute.
There's an interception. First.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hale Varsity Radio.
There's an interception, first of the game for Cincinnati, and this has been a great performance by the rookie. I mean, Taylor Britt's done it all, and now he gets to say he has a postseason pick. And it's no angel time for Cincinnati, and they can showboat and showcase. They've come in here and shown everybody just what they're made out of.
Hey, back with you on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hale Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. DB, your kids get an interception in a football game. It's snowing, and they start doing snow angels. Are you a fan? Are you not? Because you're not the biggest showboater.
I'm all about situational awareness. So, like, Micah would probably do it before Caleb would, for sure. But, like, if Caleb did it, like, after it was a clincher, like in the state championship as opposed to early, I'd be like, let's go.
But if it was in the first quarter, you'd be like, get your
I would probably
booty up.
Now, Coach Lamonzi would probably want to fight me, but I'd probably sit him.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't just pull him aside and be like, if you ever do that again.
He's not that kind of kid.
I don't think you have to worry about it.
He responds different. Like, that wouldn't be his stimuli. The thing to get him would be that you were disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't chastising him.
How about that?
He shakes that off.
How about that video of the third grade basketball team that's been circulating for like a week now?
So
about showboating during the game. And
I don't, and you're going to be in this world. That didn't really bother me.
Didn't bother me either.
It didn't really bother me. Like, I get it, right? Some people will say, oh, man, how are we raising these kids and this, that, and the other. But it's still a game. You know, you want them to have fun. Hopefully the coach is like, hey, folks, in moderation.
Right. Because I would say limit it. Don't do it every single play.
Although the little guard, not the big monster that was bigger than
everybody.
Like
he's doing the
bullying little kids, and eventually that's going to go away. But the little dude with the nice comb over in the part,
the one with like, he looked like Steve Rogers before he got the super serum.
Like
this kid.
I was okay for the little guy getting hype out there. You know?
That team strikes me as that's kind of what they're made of, though. Not necessarily the showboating, but just the
energy are made of.
The energy.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll tell you what, though, I do understand where people were coming from because it's third graders acting as if they are on top of the world. At that age, what are you trying to teach? Are you trying to teach the game, or are you trying to teach,
and I was
discipline, maturity, things like that? In third grade, I'm okay with like, oh, you're the too little thing, because you see John Morant do that all the time. Kids are wearing it on sweatshirts. Your kid even has a sweatshirt of the too little. But the like dancing as if you score a touchdown, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe don't do that, but do the other thing.
Yeah, I want people to have fun.
Like if you do the 3 thing, like that's fine. Like you hit a 3, like bow and arrow, whatever,
or the head tap.
Right.
I don't know. It's such a hard.
But also they're kids.
Sports is hard.
They're children.
So like as long as I always used to say, as long as you're not hurting anyone, and I suppose like you could
hurt somebody's feelings.
Pros and cons of people's egos,
right,
being bruised. But that's part of it. I've been on both ends of it, right? I've had a team hang 70 on me, and we've also won some big games. So I don't know. I think my general rule of thumb is I just try to control what I can control. Right? I mean, Micah had a behind the back pass yesterday, and I didn't care that they finished the play, and it was nice. I just wanted to make sure that he didn't act like that was the first time that he had done it, right? And you're kind of getting to know his personality.
He was Sam Griesel, not Kisei Tominaga.
Yeah. So I have to be completely honest, right? If I'm just keeping it 100, because there are some things about Kisei that bug the heck out of me, right? And it shouldn't. It's just, that's just me not being part of the fun police. I think so this is where I draw the line. How's this for self-righteous? Don't I need to get off my soapbox? I feel like if he was more consistent, I would be cool with it. Like, who am I?
Well, and he may have to be
Right,
more.
but
He may
I'm
have to
just
be more
being honest,
consistent
though,
now,
like,
right? Because
Hey, how
with-
short is that bench?
With that team and the position they are in, especially defensively, and they're looking for a spark offensively, Sam Griesel really hasn't found a way to be that true scorer that I wanted him to be out of the gates. He looked like that early on, but then it became the Derek Walker show in the
Yeah.
scoring column.
Boy,
And here's my question for you now, though, DB.
What do you got? So, because you skipped over your poll question.
I know. We'll get to the poll question here too, but a lot to uncover today. And you know what? This is a great chance to set up the show, and then I'll toss the question. We'll get to our poll question here in a moment. We're currently talking Nebraska basketball. We'll talk about the pipeline, the Husker pipeline, and some visitors that made their way to Lincoln this weekend. We have Sam McKewon at the 8 o'clock hour. We follow that up with Kerry Miller, talk some college basketball, and then end with Gary Davenport. But my question for you, because Jawan Gary goes down, because now Bandamel goes down, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but the way that he went down and stayed down didn't reassure me that he's going to be okay anytime soon. But hypothetically, now that you've lost 2 starters, could it get any worse? Who would be worse to lose? Derek Walker or Sam Griesel?
Derek Walker. Because he gets buckets easier, and he's one of your few remaining bigs. He's the best two-way guy Nebraska has remaining. And Fudge, I mean, I don't know if Coach Hoiberg was having a moment of, hey, I feel for you. Old school Sheila E., Shane. You don't know who Sheila E. is, but she sings this song called I Feel For You. I feel for you. Baby, I love you. Anyway, he's cool with moving Northwestern's game back to Wednesday, which I'm like, okay. I'm looking at his team's health, maybe fatigue. He's got short numbers. Maybe the day benefits him. But the time slot got moved. So now we're going to FS2. Northwestern, I think, is playing. Northwestern's got Wisconsin today, don't they, Shane?
Sure do.
Would you?
Sorry,
Would you have done
that
it?
game
Shane, Andrew, Shane.
Didn't it get moved?
Well, twice. But Wisconsin, Northwestern go today. So if you're Coach Hoiberg, are you? And that's why I almost moved Jacob, because we have NEB preps later on, but he's got the presser later. I'll be curious to see why Coach Hoiberg was so accommodating. You know what I mean? Maybe they need the rest. But the health situation, it doesn't speed up. It doesn't expedite Bandamel or Gary or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it would seem like that. You're looking out for your team versus the latter.
Doing them a favor.
Right. But in any case, I think Hoiberg wants to play no matter what. He wants this team to compete every single day. I don't know if there's a hidden agenda there.
Would you have been
accommodating?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think so. I would want to think so.
I probably listen, I'm pretty honest, right? I just told you I was like, I'm shallow, so certain things bother me that shouldn't. But I think I would have been too. Right? But how are we still where Northwestern is having their schedule compromised due to illness? Like that part. So that's the part I'm like, okay, the end for me doesn't justify the means. I'm cool with moving the game back, but I'm not cool with how we got there. Because I think you gotta fix the protocol.
I'm there.
Right? I think there should be a price to pay. Because it's not like, so UConn wasn't afforded the luxury of coaching without Hurley. No, he was sick. He had COVID. He couldn't coach. So he comes back. He's wearing the mask around his players. It's not like UConn could say, we don't have our coach, man. We're not playing.
Yeah, Creighton didn't stop playing when Kalkbrenner was out.
And by the way, speaking of which, remember I told you that Omaha World-Herald doesn't have Joel do enough? Read the piece on Trey Alexander.
Loading it up.
Way good.
And he's way good altogether. You know how you said Derek Walker? I think I'd say Sam Griesel would be a bigger loss.
Well, we almost never agree, so I would expect that.
And the reason for that, I don't know if there's another player on this team that can handle the ball like he does.
Listen, I'm with you. I am.
Yeah,
but I can only see
evils, right?
I can only see Oleg out there so much. Right?
Well,
and in the post. And how's Nebraska going to get easier baskets?
You're not going to get points without Derek Walker.
At least
you're not going to get the ball to Derek Walker without Sam Griesel,
right? At least you can get him the ball on the elbow, and he can go to work.
Yeah. Lots still to get to on the show today. We'll talk Husker football next. We'll get to Sam McKewon at 8, and we'll also hit up our poll question. So lots more to get to. Stick with us. It's Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. We're happy to have you with us on this Monday morning alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. And we're in Omaha, but some people were in Lincoln this weekend. And that includes a grouping of recruits, one being another offensive lineman. And also another Georgia kid. It seems like Matt Rule and his staff have taken notice of players on the Bulldogs roster that may not have been getting playing time that he thought they deserved, or whether it's the same on the other end that they thought they deserved. And so he's gone after the national champions to help rebuild this team.
It's all about connections. I was messing with him this weekend. I was like, hey, man, do you Coach Smart have like a secret handshake or part of the good, the good guys club? And, he explained that they just have built good relationships. He's got good rapport with a couple guys in their staff. And that's what it is in the help me out business. And I'm going to go back to something he said to me. This was probably, I don't know, it was about a month ago. And we were talking, we're just going on, carrying on. And he said something at the end that struck me as, okay, I'm going to write that down. He said, you'll realize this about me. I leave very little to chance. That was it.
And I remember you saying that.
Right? I told you. And I was like,
3 weeks ago, a month ago.
As the kids, well, it was about, we were talking about Z. We were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
So it would only been a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So that's before the breaking news. But anyway.
Right.
So I'm like, that's one of those things like that I made mental note of, because that's the one thing that I've said since, and I'm not trying to like go all the way back to Coach Solich, but since Coach Solich left the University of Nebraska, I've seen it all, right? I've had decent relationships with almost all the head coaches, some better than others. And the one thing that I rest in is this job takes a grinder, right? You've heard me say this. That's the word I use. You have to be a grinder. It's a greasy, grimy job. You have to really work at it, because all the things that made you great 30 years ago aren't really in play except for the fan base. That's the one thing that is portable over the last, and it's 50 years of success, right? Because you have to go 70, 71. Fan base was great then. They're great now. The fan base was great in the 80s. They're great now. The fan base was great in the 90s. They're great now. Still avid support. So that's the constants, but everything else is gone. The ability to get Prop 48 guys, the ability to go into the South and be like the savior and for lack of a better term, kind of white knight this thing, where you get kids out of situations that they want to get out of. Like all kinds of schools can do that now. The couple of times where you're the marquee game on television, all of that's gone. So you have to get back to good old-fashioned work. And quietly, Drew Down, not only do I think he's a grinder, because he's just kind of edgy by nature. For as cool as he is, like, listen, he's still the East Coast guy that can go to Trenton and Newark and Roselle and Philadelphia and be okay, right? That can manage the worst rape scandal in college athletics and get all your guys in Waco to toe the line. He's still that dude. Right, for his cool, where he was at track this
he's
year.
Got a backpack of skills,
right? He's still that guy. And quietly, you know what else he's doing that's a pretty good blueprint? You go ahead. You want to say something?
You know what? He gravitates to the comeback.
Dude,
think about that.
That's why
think about that for a second. Everybody out there, the Art Briles scandal for one, right? He gravitates to bringing that program back.
I can fix
right?
it.
Then he goes to the NFL, doesn't make it work, goes to Nebraska. He's gravitating back to his comeback. Then he goes
the job at Temple.
And the job at Temple too. But then he goes to Z, then he goes to IGC, and then he goes to Eric Gilbert. 3 guys that weren't all playing football the entirety of last season. He gravitates to the comeback. And better yet,
who does that sound like? That's what I like.
Better yet, Nebraska's in comeback mode.
Hey, and so I think they work hard. Like, I just don't think you can be on that staff. I told you last week the story of Coach White. He shouldn't have even been in Omaha. And not only is he in Omaha, he's going to multiple schools and he's watching Metro Wrestling, right? It's really daddy daycare, but he's like, hey, you know what?
Great movie, by the way.
I'm only 50 miles away. Let me go get busy. Kids will be okay in school. Mom's doing her thing, holding it down back home. And wife, the kid's mom.
Right. I'm with you. I was there.
So, and guess what else they're doing? They're going to be at close to 100 guys on scholarship, potentially. Now, they have to get down to 85. But guess what I like? Same thing I said about Coach Bolton baseball. SEC mentality, you want to pare it down. You got 40 guys and only 20 some are going to play. Hey, let's compete. That's what I like that he's doing. Because ultimately, when you're building a culture of toughness and resiliency, you have to be a fat trimmer. You don't get out of bed and get in the kitchen as a master chef and only get to work with the finest ingredients. You probably have had to trim some fat along the way. Then when you get the filet or the Wagyu or whatever, the table, the kitchen, the fresh ingredients, then you're really on point. So as long as they can guard against complacency and kind of the finer things that you get with Lincoln, because I think you got great leadership, you have really good resources, you got a tremendous fan base, and you're going to have top-notch facilities. Right, that bad boy's almost done, and it's going to be immaculate. So it needs to be about competition. Hey, congratulations to Team Sanford. Phelan's team, 1 point this week in competition week. Wait, we're competing daily? We're competing daily to win the week. Those are the things that I like reading, because if you want to replicate some of what you were able to do, it was a game of attrition when Nebraska was on top, and they would grind. You were afraid to be the first coach to leave. You were afraid to be the last or the first position group off the field. You weren't the one that was going home before the last guy had turned out the lights, because it made you feel some type of way. If you can generate that kind of culture, I don't know how it equates to wins, but you give yourself a chance because you have to work. You've been outworked. You haven't been, for the most part, you haven't been out-talented, right? You've been outworked. You've been out-coached. If those things you can mitigate, you give yourself a chance if you're going to keep continuing to stockpile talent, and they'll get to the number. I don't worry.
It's easier to add to 85, but it's better to cut down to 85.
And I think I don't think, like, if we're up in arms over how to get to the number, this was pre-you, but 6-7 years ago, we're up in arms that Coach Pelini only has like 76 guys on scholarship. Oh, that's self-imposed probation. We need more numbers. Blah. And then you get the other guys or gals that would say, oh, man, we're good. 70. Now that we're over and we have to trim down, that's not a problem. Do you know who it's a problem for? Folks that don't like competing. That's okay.
Yep.
That's
put them on the field and let's see who keeps their scholarship.
Spring ball will sort itself out. It just will.
You'll find the guys that want to be there.
And that's what spring used to be for. It wasn't for having scrimmages at, flag touch football at the end. Like, when you're trying to grow and groom a program, I don't care if it's business, if it's athletics, even if it's in your family, there has to be some degree of healthy competition. And it doesn't matter who it's between. It can go coach to coach, coach to player, player to player, admin to coach. Competition is good. That administrative staff, they need to compete daily. Hey, this is who we want to be. This is who we desire to be. This is the model behavior we need to have. Coach Rule is going to be, in that staff is going to be keeping track. Hey, you told me. Hey, you told me you were going to. Same as Trev and those guys can look at Coach Rule. Hey, you told me.
Mm-hmm.
You told me. I'm keeping mental note. Coach Rule talks to the players. Hey, I told you. Players are keeping track, right? That's
competition's good. I don't think anybody can argue that it's not good.
Now, when it crosses over into being paranoid, it better be a healthy paranoia because sometimes you need to simmer down a little. But for the most part, man, like they'll get there. You look at that wide receiving room, there'll be some guys going home. No question.
It's already deep, and it's getting deeper and deeper.
You look at that secondary.
Speaking of wide receivers, and I know we're kind of pressed for time. We're talking to Sam McKewon next, so we can continue conversations like this. But how about Malachi Coleman's debut at the Polynesian Bowl?
Yeah.
And you talked about liking things to read. How about the national writers comparing him to DK Metcalf?
Listen, so here's the thing that I like about that, and I'm going to land the plane the same place I started. He's exuding what everybody that was criticizing him, which I still think is a vocal minority. Like we blew it way out of proportion. 98% of the state of Nebraska's fan base wants Malachi Coleman to be good. Mm-hmm. They do, right? So you know what he appears to want to do? Compete.
And he's okay with placing blame on himself when things aren't trending the direction people think they should.
And that's all. I even think the critics want, right? Compete.
Sam McKewon's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Having some fun this morning on Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, 590 ESPN Omaha, 1480 ESPN Lincoln, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Happy to have you with us, and happy to have Sam McKewon with us now on the show. He's the sports editor and Nebraska columnist for the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra. Sam, good morning. What's up, Sam?
We got him.
Good morning, guys.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened there.
Hey,
he heard his intro and he was just in wow.
Well, he might still be traumatized from school drop-off. Have we done that yet, Sam, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, we're done. We're done with it. We got it done early today. I said the guys are calling me at 8 o'clock. I got to get this done, Mary. Let's go. What's that?
Oh, Sam. Hey, we were just, as a follow-up to our last segment, we were talking about some Nebraska visitors and then competition that's now led within the program. And I had tossed something DB's way about how Matt Rule seems to gravitate to the comeback just when he went to Temple and then he went to Baylor and then he comes to Nebraska. Not only was that a comeback for him, but for the program and even with certain players with Xavier Betts, IGC, now Eric Gilbert. Do you see that being a trend for Matt Rule too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he, he's drawn to a kind of a resurrection project. I think he may struggle to take over a situation where it's already all kind of set and done. Like if Kirby Smart were to leave Georgia and go to the NFL, Rule may not necessarily love going to a program that's already made. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think he likes the idea of turning something around. Something's going in the wrong direction, and he wants to take it in the right direction. And there's a lot to do at Nebraska in that regard, And yeah, they are taking a little bit of a chance on Gilbert, sure. He's pretty talented, so if you can get him going, then he's probably going to be the player on the field, which is helpful. But yeah, I think he's drawn to that. He's drawn to that kind of comeback mentality, and that's certainly what Nebraska is. This is the toughest of the 3 head coaching jobs he's had in college.
It was interesting. I was listening to some Hassan Reddick bites from this past weekend, and he was talking about his journey. It automatically, of course, made me think of Coach Rule because I know that relationship. I think of Robbie Anderson. I think of recruiting to Temple. I think of having to toe the line in Waco. How much of this do you think gives you confidence because he's already put parameters in place before with a track record to get the desired discipline that they need to be successful on the field?
Well, I think it gives you some confidence. Yes. I think the challenge he's going to have at Nebraska that I don't know that I know he didn't have. I doubt he had at Temple. And I doubt he actually had at Baylor too, is this sense of, whether the team wins or not, you're kind of a superstar. And I kind of wrote a little bit about that today in my rewind about how the program makes $97 million. And they did that in the year when they went 3-9, and the South streak was almost to expire. So, I mean, the challenge that Rule has is getting the team to embrace an internal standard that has nothing to do with sort of outside affirmation in the offseason, which almost always happens, and then in the season criticism. And then what I've found, in recent or historically with Nebraska in the last 10 years or so, is that criticism is over ingested. And then that becomes part of the narrative that people don't appreciate us and nobody but us. And then that's not a helpful impulse either. So Rule has to try to change some of the wiring there. And that to me is going to be a challenge. I think Scott struggled to do that. I think what Scott wanted was, and you know more about this than I do, is ideally Scott Frost wanted a team that was sort of loose and tough and didn't give a crap and just kind of played fast and shut out all the outside noise. Well, for one thing, I think Frost had a hard time shutting out the outside noise, and I think the players did too, both in praise and criticism. So I think what Rule's got to get these guys is to a place where they're not worried about what the outside noise is.
Sam, something was interesting to me. I can't remember who tweeted out. Somebody from the staff was talking about congratulations. It might have been Coach Foley. I'm not sure. To the competition week and the team that was awarded the point and hoping to carry it into next week. Man, and I remember a conversation with a guy that I had on the previous staff about how they wanted to incorporate competition into everything. And it has to be more than just competition Tuesday, that guys bring their own juice. And I'm like, in my head, I remember thinking, well, if it's more than just about competition Tuesday, why don't we make the competitions more than just Tuesday, right? That was like my conventional wisdom. But I didn't know enough to know if they weren't competing on a daily basis. How much of, when you're building that culture from the onset, that it is a daily thing for those guys to fall back on, because for all intents and purposes, you hope that they won't know any better than to compete on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think Nebraska's football team at least was competitive a lot in like recent years. Like they didn't quit per se. I think that what I would say is that there wasn't always a cohesive approach to how you're going to win a football game, and I do think Rule will help them there.
Good point.
Scott. Man, I'm not a football coach, okay? You are. I think Scott's got a lot to learn about that. I mean, there were things that would happen within the context of games that I don't think Matt Rule's going to make the same mistakes. There were decisions that Frost would make, or the idea that you win a coin toss and then you want to run your team out there and try to score right away, and then it doesn't work, and then you're behind. I don't know that he always knew how to win games in the Big Ten. I think Rule will be better there, but they were competitive. I think, just speaking broadly, I think the competitiveness ethos is not just trying hard and not caring a lot, but preparing for how you're going to do it. So having a good plan, having a good, outlook on how you're going to do that, and what resilience looks like. Now, I think Nebraska was pretty resilient at times under Frost. They didn't quit in a lot of their games. They did under Riley. So, I think they had some qualities, but I think the preparation piece, I think Nebraska often struggled under Frost to figure out how they were going to go about winning a game. And oftentimes this led to very close games that maybe shouldn't have been, or it led to hideous first quarters that they were never able to get out of. And I think that's an area where Matt Rule is going to change, some of the things they do.
We're speaking with Sam McKewon at SW McKewon OWH on Twitter. Sam, you talk about being competitive and certain offensive struggles. We saw that with the line last year, but even still in the football game last night, Cincinnati's offensive line wasn't the healthiest, and they still were able to perform. So with guys coming back on this offensive line and knowing that Nebraska has already missed out on a trio of portal entries, former portal entries, I should say, a name that was up in Nebraska this past weekend was Jacob Hood. And if that could be a guy that gets added, what do you think is best case for Nebraska right now? Is it, finding a guy like Hood and adding to that offensive line and taking a guy over from a program that just won a national championship? Or is it, just continuing to work what you got?
Well, I think they wouldn't have brought Jacob up if they hadn't thought they needed another body.
Mm.
They have lost some offensive linemen in the transfer portal, and also I think there's at least one, and maybe two that are just not going to play anymore. Matt Rule wants to have a big offensive line and wants to lean on teams. I'm not sure the guy they brought up is a tackle. He's pretty big, and he's not. I wouldn't describe his movement skills as great. So I don't know. Maybe they will put him at tackle. He's one of the few transfers they're adding where I think there's an understanding that it could be multiple years before you see him contribute on the field. I don't think he's going to be like a starter next year or anything. So I do think there's a very good chance that he joins the team and becomes, a reserve. And if we're going to have this system where you can add as many scholarship players a year and the transfer portal exists, I think you're going to see teams like Nebraska add a lot of guys every single year and play the numbers game and just basically say, hey, we're going to add 35. It guarantees you a spot on this year's team. It doesn't guarantee you a spot on next year's team. And you're going to have to battle for your position until you become a starter. And I think that's maybe a bottom line, tough-minded way of looking at it. But I think that's where Nebraska's going. It's going to be a competitive spring. And there's going to be some guys who leave the program because they don't have a spot in the roster.
It's eerily similar, except they had bigger numbers to use until it got trimmed down. But it's once upon a time, it seemed like Nebraska would sign 25, and you're like, how are they signing 25 guys every year? Now this year he signs 20 some odd guys, and he's adding 8, 9 from the portal. I kind of like the fact, Sam, that I don't think any good chefs can cook without knowing how to trim fat.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, they're going to learn, I think, pretty quickly. Every addition, I think, probably has a spot on next year's team. I don't know that they have a spot after that. And there's some guys that have returned to the program who, may want to stay in the program, but may find that they're fourth or fifth string and they're, the writing is on the wall. And, I think you're going to see a little bit of that with walk-ons too.
How advantageous, Sam, do you think it is that the new coaches get the 10 scholarships where you can keep guys on scholarship, but they're not playing football, where that can buy you some, well, you don't have to go home, but you just can't play football?
You have to retire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good. There's some kids that clearly their future is in something else. It's not going to be in professional football, whether that's at the NFL or CFL or XFL level. And that's an opportunity for those guys to pursue that without losing, their status as academically or as a scholarship athlete. Yeah, you got to do that sometimes.
It's just interesting, right? Because with only 13 real seniors that can exhaust eligibility, one of them's, Marco Ortiz. He's got a long snap. 2 are Braxton Clark and Tyreek Johnson. We haven't seen Tyreek Johnson since I don't know when. One, Hunter Anthony, Stephon Wynn Jr. Some of those guys, Sam, for as young as Nebraska is in some key spots, they appear to be old in the middle. The redshirt freshmen, the sophomores, and the juniors. You have to like the way that that's trending, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know that I think the defensive line is a question mark and needs to be watched closely. I'm not really of the thought that it's just going to be a plug and play on defense. I think when you change your scheme and the Big Ten offenses last year were historically bad. Like, you're not going to get another year like that. It's just very unlikely. I'm not saying we're going to go back to 2011 offenses when they were really good, but
although
these were historically bad.
Although, Sam, hang on. Could I make the case that Wisconsin and Illinois and potentially Northwestern, I agree with you. Iowa should be bad, but Purdue's going to come back to the pack. Wisconsin's starting a new offense. Illinois will be playing a new quarterback without DeVito. Are you sure that you see an uptick in offense across the board, or it's just not as bad as it was a year ago?
Well, I think that's a reasonable question. I think Wisconsin will actually have a more explosive offense.
Well, just flipping over to air raid, huh?
They kind of ran aground last year.
No, I get it.
Purdue, no. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what Purdue's offense does and what they decide to do. I also think the defenses may not be as good, and of course, the defenses not being as good has a positive effect on the offense. No, I mean, if you just look at the offenses last year, they got historically bad. I mean, Iowa's offense was awful. Wisconsin's offense was really bad too.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, so I think I would say, just statistically speaking, the offenses, even if it doesn't look like it at this moment, will be better next year. Iowa's will be better.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think some of the others will too. And I think Nebraska can duplicate what they did on offense last year and maybe even be a little better. I think they've got enough players, and I think they're going to have, I don't know, like, I think what they're going to come up with is going to be more cohesive than what Nebraska's offense became once Frost got let go and Whipple was just doing whatever the hell he wanted.
Yeah, one of the schools.
It didn't go well.
One of the schools that's interesting is Minnesota because of the staff turnover, and Coach Fleck will be here Wednesday. But do you feel like you have a good handle on Minnesota with you're going to have co-coordinators? They've been the model of consistency for the most part. I think defensively they won't skip a beat. They they get one of their guys back in the fold from Syracuse that's really familiar with that staff. Coach Collins is still there. Like, I think Minnesota will be okay defensively. Does that offense interest you?
Well, it looks like they're going to try to incorporate a dual threat quarterback versus having a quarterback who runs and then having Tanner Morton. And to be clear, like, the Big Ten West gets one more year of this. One more. After that, all of these teams in the West have to think about how they're going to beat UCLA, USC, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Maryland may have won the Big Ten West last year. Maryland. And Maryland had the misfortune of having to play all three of those teams, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. The Big Ten champion, or the Big Ten West champion, got to avoid Michigan and Ohio State and hosted Penn State and lost in the season opener. So, like, there's a relationship between your record and how many of these teams you actually have to play and, like, how easy that is. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Minnesota avoided Michigan and Ohio State too.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all these teams know that starting in 2024, you're not going to be able to roll out a 280-yard offense that scores 18 points and finish better than 6th or 7th in the Big Ten. And so all of a sudden that 9-4 record goes to 7-6 or 6-7, and people don't feel as good about your win total. That's why what Nebraska's been the last 3 or 4 years is so disappointing, because they had such an incredible opportunity.
I don't know, Sam. USC and UCLA are going to have to figure out how to block some people. You may be surprised. Caleb Williams has only got one more year, and he's not coming to the Big Ten.
This is true. I
You know,
think USC is gonna be a very
DTR's
explosive
played
team.
his 56th year in Pasadena.
I understand that. And I understand that USC lost twice to Utah, which is probably the most like the Big Ten in the way that they play football. But you still have, I mean, Minnesota is playing USC. That's different than Ohio State.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
with you.
oh, okay, Ohio State's going to beat USC by 14. Minnesota's not going to beat USC scoring 16 points. And I think they beat, I don't know who they beat last year, but, you know, like Iowa beat Minnesota, I don't know, 17-10. You're not going to be able to just do that.
Mm.
And so they're going to have to figure out ways to score. And I think there's a big impetus behind why Wisconsin did what it did. I think they want to win a championship. They want to win a Big Ten championship. And they knew that what they had on board isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And he could have won 8 or 9 per year.
Can't wait to watch that offense around October, or, Halloween and in November in Madison.
I agree.
That'll be fun.
We watched it when Tim Beck was at Nebraska. Like, it did not work. It lost to Wisconsin and all those things. So, like, I can appreciate that they're taking a risk. And as I'd written before, they're basically swapping out identities and doing the thing that Nebraska willingly did back in 2003. And I think, Chris McIntosh is doing something that I think a lot of ADs wouldn't do. But you have to ask yourself, do you want to win a championship? Yes, you do. You can't do what they're doing.
I'll tell you what.
The end. And so that's the challenge.
I'll tell you what, I've been sitting there for like what I think 15 minutes, just in reflect mode of what both of you guys were saying. And, I kind of just brought to this last point. I mean, what do you think you favor on? Do you favor on game management when you look at the Big Ten? Because you don't have to score a lot of points to win in the Big Ten when you're facing against a team like maybe a USC, UCLA potentially, or do you favor the offense that they bring in from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten that we all kind of think the Big Ten is evolving toward?
Well, to some degree, game management is dictated by whatever, schedule or framework you have to deal with. And so, like, for many years, we've had this split between the two sides. The three best programs were on the East. That was, since 2018, the three best programs have been on the East. And so now you have to recalibrate that because there won't be any divisions starting in 2024. There's a good chance that you're going to stay at 9 games. And that playoff thing starts to come into play. And the challenge, for example, now TJ Fleck can make a playoff, a 12-team playoff. You can make that. Couldn't make the 4. He could have won 11 games and he wouldn't have made the 4. In fact, he did win 11 games and didn't get any close to making the 4. Now that you can make the 12, you have to think about how you schedule, because now that these committee members have an opportunity to reward or punish teams for how they schedule in the non-conference, TJ Fleck's going to have to look into a mirror and ask himself if New Mexico State and Valdosta State and South Dakota State are the 3 teams that he really wants to play. It was very helpful for him when he wanted to win football games. But to make the playoff, you may have to do something a little harder than that. And so, like, there's all the ways that you kind of look at, like, here's what you have to deal with. Here are the teams you have to play. And your management of a game is dictated to some degree by that. Let me add this, that I think there are often teams that don't do a very good job of trying to win the football game in front of them because they're set on doing things that are, endemic to their identity. So a fast tempo team who's playing Ohio State shouldn't go fast. They're going to lose. Or do you want to win the game, or do you want to prove a point? And that's why I think that's one of the. Or there's teams that won't run the triple option because it's not cool. Do you want to be cool, or do you want to win 7 games?
Fair point.
A lot of coaches don't want to win 7 games. They want to do it their way, and if they fail, then they can go get an offensive coordinator job at a cool school. That's how people are.
Sam, you're the best, man. We appreciate it. Take care.
Sam.
All right.
Kerry Miller's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
Now into the front court is Sears. Joined on the floor by Miller, Burnett, Kerry, and JQ. JQ with it in the right corner. And JQ with it in the right corner. He'll drive into the lane. Beautiful pass. Kerry for the flush.
Mitchell trying to back McKinnon. Shot clock at 5. Pick and roll. Blackman. Mitchell trying to back McKinnon. Shot clock at 5. Pick and roll. Blackman Mitchell. Pinion's open in the corner. 3-ball good.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Oh, here we go, trailing it. Oh, he missed it. But he missed it.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
and JQ. JQ with it in the right corner. He'll drive it in the lane. Beautiful pass. Gurley for the flush.
Mitchell trying to back McInnes in. Shot clock's at 5. Pick and roll. Black to Mitchell. Pinion's open in the corner. 3-ball good.
Miles Wilmoth in the corner. A three-pointer no good. Rebounded by Jackson. Great pass, Hawkins. Hawkins stuffs it home.
Well, here we go. Maryland inbounding. Kerry to Young. And a tip away. But it's picked up by Young. He'll have a 3 at the horn. He missed it.
Some great college basketball games over the weekend. It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers here with you. Welcoming in now Kerry Miller, college basketball columnist at Bleacher Report. Kerry, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How's it going?
Good, Kerry. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Just working on yet another bracket projection that time of year.
Hey, you know what? We'll stay right there.
Best wishes.
We will stay right there because it seems like there's a lot of inconsistency when it comes to a lot of the top teams in college basketball. How much have you struggled throughout the year to try to figure out where you would lay these teams come March?
I mean, nobody's good, right? Alabama's won their last 8 games by a combined 167 points. Like, they look like the best team right now. I don't trust Alabama in the tournament. I was probably going to say Houston to win it all, and then they lost a home game to Temple yesterday. Like, it's a mess. Just trying to come up with anybody who deserves to be a 1 seed, let alone anyone that you trust to make it to the Sweet 16.
Kerry, so I guess since everybody in the top 25 enjoys losing, weekend after weekend, it's hard to get a litmus test. But let me go to the Pac-12 because the Big 12 is easy. We'll get to that here in a second because everybody thinks that conference is good. But you're watching UCLA and Arizona. At what point do you look at UCLA and think they should be better, or do you just like Arizona that much?
I mean, that game was just ugly. Like,
it was a mess.
I know that they both have good. UCLA has definitely improved on defense, like by leaps and bounds from where they were certainly before Mick Cronin got there. I mean, they were god awful before that. But watching that game and then watching Michigan State, Indiana yesterday felt like completely different sports. I don't know. Maybe it was just an off shooting night for both the Bruins and the Wildcats, but they're both on the 2 seed line right now. And again, teams that I don't trust to make the Sweet 16.
Add to that, how about KU's loss to TCU, the worst home loss in 2 years for that KU squad? They lose to K-State the game before, and now you have a stretch of Baylor, Kentucky, K-State, Iowa State, and Texas on deck for KU. You start the year, what was it, 16-0, and now you're on a 2-loss streak. You're facing off against a lot of these teams in either the Big 12 or now the SEC in regards to Kentucky. And where do you kind of place KU into the mix of all this stuff? Because now that they've lost 2 straight, there's no way you can keep them up in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, they lost those 2 games to Kansas State, TCU. No bad losses whatsoever. They're tied with Purdue for the most quadrant 1 wins in the country, at least as of yesterday. I haven't looked this morning, but if you take out the recency bias, like, they have the most quality wins. I still have them at number 4 overall.
Completely agree.
In part because, I mean, are you putting UCLA or Arizona up there? Or are you putting Texas ahead of Kansas right now? Like, there's just nobody really that deserving, even though it feels like Kansas shouldn't be up there. But I'm not surprised that they're going through a little something here. They have one of the shortest rotations in the country, and they played one of the toughest non-conference schedules before one of the toughest conference schedules. Like, I don't think they appreciated how exhausted they were going to get at this point in the season. I mean, it feels like Grady Dick is really hitting that proverbial freshman wall lately, and Jalen Wilson can't beat these Big 12 teams by himself. So I think they'll rally. They might lose a few more games here in the next few days, but they've done so much good to this point that it still feels like they're on the path for a 1 seed.
You know, the reason I asked that, or the reason I say that I thought they would be knocked out of the top 5 is I watched UNC go through a similar stretch early on this season where they lost to Iowa State and then they lost to Bama, and then all of a sudden they were 18th in the country. So I guess, you know, maybe now that we're deeper into the season, that weighs more.
I mean, they certainly might drop out of the top 5 in the AP poll. I couldn't care less about the AP poll from a bracketology perspective. But, yeah, I mean, North Carolina was already struggling before they went through that road. Like, they barely beat James Madison. I know they struggled a bit with Charleston, which actually ended up not being a disappointing struggle. Now that Charleston's got 20 in a row since that loss. But Kansas obviously did a whole lot more good before this, you know, rough stretch than North Carolina did.
Yeah, I understand that.
Kerry, let me ask you something, because you mentioned Indiana, and I was in the first segment, I was telling Andrew, when they're going and Shafino is playing well, I know they're not going to get X back for a while, but let me ask it to you a different way. Teams that probably need some consistency at the point guard spot to really cement them. I submit to you, Indiana, with Trace Jackson Davis and potentially a healthy Race Thompson. UConn, who's been shaky at the point guard spot, and Kansas. One of those 3 teams, if they get some steady, consistent quality play at point guard, who do you like?
Can I add Gonzaga to the?
Well, isn't that something? Yeah, completely agreed. But I think Gonzaga's. I think Gonzaga's one of the top teams in the country still.
Yeah, I mean, they had that bad. What was it? Loyola Marymount, I believe, beat them in the kennel. Just never happens. Broke like 50 different streaks all at once. But I'd say of those 3, I still trust Kansas, even though Harris has been not great lately. I know he got hurt in the Kansas State. It looked like he might have gotten a concussion, but then he came back, so I guess he didn't get a concussion unless he's got Tua Tagovailoa's doctors. Who knows what's going on? But I think they have Jalen Wilson, aside from Zach Edey, Jalen Wilson, National Player of the Year right now. When Grady Dick is hitting threes, they're almost unbeatable as long as Harris isn't just committing turnovers left and right, which he doesn't. He's pretty solid point guard. He's not Frank Mason, but he's good enough to get them through. So I would say of those 3, Kansas. But yeah, Indiana, when anybody other than Jackson Davis shows up, I mean, Tamar Bates was just drilling threes yesterday against Michigan State. Trey Galloway's had a good couple of games. And
Cobb is capable of making shots. So, yeah,
they certainly should be better. I mean, they were supposed to be the best team in the Big Ten, and there wasn't really even any debate about that in the preseason. It's disappointing how close to the bubble they have been.
What does UConn do in the backcourt to provide them some consistency?
I don't know. I mean, Tristan Newton looked really good early in the year, and now that's kind of obviously fallen off a bit. Really, they need Sonogo to just be that guy, right? Trace Jackson Davis, Drew Timme, Jalen Wilson, these big men, they'll just take over when it needs to happen. And we haven't really seen that from Sonogo. Like, he had some great statistical games early in the year, but now that they've been struggling, he's kind of going like, 10, 6, and 2 on a regular basis. And he needs to be that dude for them until the guards can, figure it out and help them out. But I think the allure of Connecticut earlier on was that they had 9 guys, any of them could dominate, and it makes it feel like they're more, averse to a bad stretch like they've gone through, but they haven't had those 9 guys really stepping up for them anymore.
Hey, Kerry, about a minute and a half here. Keep it in the Big East. As you look at Creighton, where do you have them in your bracketology report, and how important is the stretch in February for them to, kind of gain? Yeah,
they
gain
can
more momentum?
They can stack some wins here.
Yeah, they're definitely the toughest team right now, right? I think they're 20th in the net. The quality metrics, Ken Palm and whatnot, they're on average around 15th. So, the predictive metrics say this is a Sweet 16 caliber team. The resume says this team might not belong in the field. I have them as a 10 seed right now, and I'm not even, really taking into account that Ryan Kalkbrenner was out for 3 of those games that they lost during that 6-game losing streak. I that's certainly important. I think that's something the committee will discuss, but I think basically every team has some sort of injury that they have to discuss by that point. So I kind of just ignore it for now and just look at the numbers, and I think they're okay. I think they should get in if they can, live up to their predictive metrics the rest of the way.
Kerry, real quick, with St. John, Xavier, Georgetown, and Nova, 2 home games in that. 4-0 gets 4-0. You feel a lot better about the prowess meeting the expectations?
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to win those 4 games.
Yeah,
I think they have 4 games left against the other definite tournament teams in the conference, and even if they were to go 0-4 in those games, as long as they take care of business in the other 8 against the bottom half of the league, I think they get in.
Kerry, thanks so much, man. We appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
3 of the 4 at home.
You got it. Take care.
Thanks, Kerry.
A great note there. Gary Davenport's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
We're going to do this again next Sunday on the road. We're going to do this again next Sunday on the road at Kansas City. Nowhere else we'd rather be. Best 7 days of your life. Let's get ready and take it on the road. Who's breaking? Cam Taylor Britt, you got to break it.
Y'all ready? Let's do that. Who they think gonna beat them Bengals? Who they think gonna beat them Bengals?
I think the answer to that question is the whole world, because tickets were being sold for that KC Buffalo game prior to the Buffalo Cincinnati game.
And all bias aside, I think because he's had some, clock management things, and, Cincinnati was the streaky team last year, and we said, oh, are they really that good? And kind of, oh, by the way, Zach Taylor and that coaching staff had a day yesterday coaching circles around Buffalo. Like, I think we kind of understate the camaraderie and what he means to that team in terms of their leadership, because he appears to be the perfect guy for that football team.
He is the older Joe Burrow on the sidelines. Like, he's cool, he's calm, he's collected. He can be a little cocky in times. He can be confident in other times, and he can also back up everything that he says and does.
How about my favorite? Because last year and the year before last, we did a top 5 of guys that I would take off Nebraska's current roster that I would play with. CTB, Cam Taylor Britt, was in that top 5.
Think about what he means to that team.
Just knowing his personality, right? He's feisty. He's competitive. I always said he was a better athlete than people really gave him credit for. Like, oh, how fast is he? That's fine. I mean, he's answering those questions too. He's close, and I was saying this with Hap on social media yesterday. He's close. Another good stretch run here, half a season. He's close to becoming a steal in the NFL draft. A steal in the NFL draft as a fairly high draft pick, right? Was he 4th round? Was CTB 4th round?
Cam Taylor Britt?
Yeah.
I thought he was earlier than that.
I'm probably shorting him. Was he 3rd?
I thought he was a 2nd.
That sounds high.
I could be wrong.
No big deal. That sounds high.
Could be wrong.
Nope, he's a 2nd rounder, 60th pick. Close to becoming a steal. 60th overall pick. I like the games within the games, right? So, full disclosure, I fell in love with watching San Francisco's run blocking schemes in the second half. Because I
don't know how you don't fall in love with them every single time they play football.
But I'm not even watching I don't know. Like, I'm not all that fun to watch games with sometimes, because I'm watching other things other than what's going on where the ball is, because I think the bigs will take me to it. And after McGlinchey got Reggie White humped, like, it seemed to wake him up, right? Because Micah Parsons put it on him, and it was trending on Twitter. And I'm like, you got to slow down the monster that is Micah Parsons. You got to run the football. Dallas got in what I call 2 eyes. That means they put their D tackles head up over the guards. I don't know how much you see it. It doesn't seem like you see it a ton anymore, but I watched San Francisco in the second half make all these little schematic changes. And I like the game within the game, especially up front. Just like I like how they move CTB all over the place yesterday. Sometimes he's outside the numbers. Sometimes he can get in and play over the slot. He's good in run defense. He's probably, in the last 4 or 5 years of competitors, he's probably the most competitive person that Nebraska had on their roster. He was like that in practice. He was like that in games. He responded well after being benched. Remember the famous fair catch, not fair catch, running it out of the end zone. It was the first points that they gave up in that season. He had a little talking with Coach Chenander and those guys early on. had to rest for a little while. He come stay over here, and he bounced back to ball. I said, you know what? That cements my love. That cements my love for a guy that it doesn't always have to be rainbows and butterflies for him to function.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy you do not have to babysit. I'm telling you, they're coaches' dreams. You could walk away, say, I want these drills ran. I'll see you on Thursday, and I don't have to worry about a thing.
It'll get done.
That's CTB.
We're waiting on Gary Davenport. We're trying to get him on. We tried to get him on last week, and if we
He
can't,
was so
we'll keep
apologetic.
trying.
I thought
know.
we had him.
I know. We'll keep trying. Hey, keeping it with CTB here. If you had to redo the 2022 draft and you're looking for a corner, CTB was the 9th corner off the board. Now, you don't put him above Sauce. You don't put him above Stingley Jr., although he could compete up that high. After going 9th, where would you take Cam Taylor-Britt? Would you take him before?
Give me the rundown of corners.
So it went Stingley first, and then Sauce,
Yep.
and then it went McDuffie to Kansas City.
I like McDuffie though.
Mhm.
Okay.
It went Kyer Elam. Is that Elam?
Elam.
Florida corner went to Buffalo.
Starting to play better,
right?
But right now I'd take CTB above Elam.
Kyler Gordon to the Bears. I would have taken.
I've
CTB.
taken CTB.
Mm-hmm. Then you have Alontae Taylor, New Orleans, out of Tennessee.
Push.
And did I miss one? I feel like I missed one.
I mean, yeah, he probably moves up.
Andrew Booth Jr. to the Vikings.
Yeah, I'd take him ahead of Booth. He can do more.
So Cam Taylor-Britt already seems like a slam dunk.
I'm
the
telling
Bengals.
you, he's
a player.
You don't have to.
He's a competitor.
You just trust that he's going to find a way to get it done. And I'm riding with those guys, right? It's like I just got into this knockdown drag out argument at the barbershop the other day, and we were talking about high school quarterbacks and this, that, and the other. And you know, somebody was coming as I was leaving, and it was, well, you know, such and such isn't that good, and look at such and such's offers. And I'm in my head, and I'm not, because it can easily come across as just vouching for your guy. But listen, what are the things that I gravitate towards? I want competitiveness. I want winners. I want guys that I don't have to micromanage, that don't care about the fluff. So for me personally, this is just on a high school level, I'm riding with Anthony Rizak, right? Like, I'm taking the guy that I know goes to get work in, that competes, that finds ways to win, over some other guys that may get a lot more fluff, right? Because he's a winner. Because I just think coaches think, and this is how CTB is, right? And you don't have to ride the upside of like a Taylor or an Elam. If a guy's going to be a 7 every day, I said this last week, I'll figure out how to get some advantages. Just don't be a 2 one day and a 10 the next. Those guys drive coaches crazy because you wait around and you coach around waiting for a 10. Give me a 7 and consistency, and we'll scheme you up, right? Like, and that's just what I gravitate towards. And it's just amazing how we fall in love with potential and talent. And at some point, winning matters. Like, are you winning? Are you a winner? Do you play your best when it matters the most?
It's what I brought up during a commercial break with you about Josh Allen. I said, can Buffalo win a Super Bowl?
That was interesting.
With Josh Allen.
I couldn't even really answer the question.
And the reason I asked that question is because this is a question I've had to answer before.
The alien?
The alien. I had to answer this question before in regards to Vladimir Tarasenko with the Blues. Everybody kept saying, I don't think you can win a cup with Tarasenko. I think you need to move him, build around your team more to win, because Tarasenko isn't the guy to win you a Stanley Cup, which it proved to be that way because Binnington ended up being the guy that won you that Stanley Cup. But when you look at Josh Allen, he's supposed to be the guy. We back him every season as if he is the guy. Buffalo was the favorite to win this year
he
because
was the
Josh
odds-on favorite
Allen
to win the MVP,
was
right?
the guy out there throwing the football. but you watch Josh Allen play this year, and I'm not convinced he's the guy. I'm not convinced Buffalo can ever win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen as their quarterback.
888-638-4876. Is it recency bias that we're questioning whether he's a winner? Because he's
maybe a little bit.
Because he hasn't won before.
Mm-mm.
He ain't winning college. And
they
haven't
can get there.
And
they
so
can
far,
get far.
They haven't,
but they can't get over the hump
in the NFL.
Would you take Mahomes over him? Yes. Would you take Burrow over him? Yes. There are quarterbacks that I think come out of the AFC more times than Josh Allen.
Yeah, Burrow's a winner though. Mahomes is a winner.
Josh Allen, we talk about him being a winner.
Do you know? I saw a stat the other day. This is going to test me because you bragged me up about being able to remember numbers. I think Patrick Mahomes is either 4th or 5th in fourth quarter come from behind victories. And if you pit him against the rest of the guys that are on the list, he trails Kirk Cousins by like 3 or 4 games. But Kirk Cousins has
how many extra games on him?
And I think Kirk Cousins has like 23 and Mahomes has like 19, something like that. Patrick Mahomes, for as young, he's a winner. He's the only aforementioned guy that if they're down by double digits, you're probably still taking that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the MVP. He's the best quarterback in football, and I don't even really think it's close.
We'll continue this conversation as we head over to Morning Dump, but that's it for today on Coffee and Cream. We will see you tomorrow.